Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. We have Angie Manson that is with us. Was near. Nice to have you on. I was about to make a joke about Charles Manson, but you don't make those nowadays.
No, you can. And because I always have to say, I am not related because nobody likes that last name and everybody mispronounces my last name because nobody likes it.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so that's out the way. And yeah, just another parenthesis that Charles Manson's pretty obvious because my name is Charles and yours is Manson. So my brain, it like unites both. But yeah, that aside, Angie is a pretty fascinating person. We're going to talk about fitness, recovery, addiction, and yeah, Elevate Addiction Services, which is Angie's company. This podcast brought to you by podfire.com. If you want to start, scale, be invited to a pod, or even find sponsors, podcasts are amazing. Really glad I have Angie in front of me today, and that's because of one reason: podcasts. Podfire.com. Angie, can you give us a bit more information about yourself and about Elevate Addiction Services?
So the shortened version is I own and operate a residential treatment program, drug and alcohol treatment program in Northern California. I have a couple different locations in Santa Cruz and South Lake Tahoe. We also have a virtual outpatient. And it is a completely different kind of program that focuses on health, nutrition, accountability, mindfulness. We are not AA or NA. We're about empowerment and overcoming your addiction, not having a disease for the rest of your life that you are chained to. So we are all about giving the person lots of tools to handle their traumas, which put them on their path, but then also tools to overcome so that they can go on and live normal, productive lives after addiction.
Really love the cause. And any human on this planet Earth can relate to addiction. We're all very much susceptible, or all of our brains operates on pretty much the same biochemistry cocktail, endorphin, serotonin, especially, and oxytocin and so forth. So we're all susceptible to those. In my case, I was first addicted to video games, then it was porn. I had my phase of partying in life. I wouldn't call myself an alcoholic, but I definitely have that in my Irish family, and I could have fallen into that. And yeah, it's like trying to alleviate your pain, right? And trying to find a meaning in your life. Nowadays, my addiction is entrepreneurship, and having these fun conversations. So tell me about yourself. How about how did you get into that, and why did you decide to specifically start a company in that area?
So I was getting in trouble at a very young age. I started drinking and smoking at like 11. And so by the time I was 21, I'd gotten myself in a lot of trouble and I was facing 10 years in prison. And I was fortunate enough to have a judge who gave me drug diversion. So I was able to go to a program, which I was sentenced to for a year, which is difficult to find. Most programs are not that long. So after staying there for a few months, I started working there. I started being the right-hand man of the executive director, and I learned every position within that organization. And after a year, the judge was like, this is awesome, but you still have 2 more years of probation and you still have $14,000 of restitution you owe. So I stayed put and I kept doing what I was doing. And at the end of the 3 years, the judge was so pleased with finally seeing a success in his courtroom, because he doesn't get to see that very often, but also to see me grow and change as a person and become like a very responsible, knowledgeable adult that was giving back. And so he, at the end of it, took away the felonies, the restitutions. He completely cleaned my slate, let me have a new lease on life. And I just continued to stay there. And I ended up taking over that company and ran it as a nonprofit for 20 years. And then about 8 years ago, we transitioned away from that program, created my own program, which is called Elevate Addiction Services. And I've been CEOing that for the last 8 years. So all in all, this is not all I've ever known, but I've been doing this for about 29 years now.
Very inspiring story. And I had my dealings with the legal system as well. So been there and done that and understand that part of yours, and made me a bit sad to hear that you were one of, probably, if we would have to spot statistics there, it's probably 3% of the success case that they have in the legal system. Like, doesn't that ring a bell in society of how we should deal with folks? I just consider folks that break the law folks that need more attention or energy, more love, kind of. I think that's how we would fix it, not necessarily by punishing people. The equation is quite simple, right? If you watch parent educate their children's, some of them get terrible parents that spend zero time with them, that some of them get raped, some of them get bullied, and as a result there's a hole left in their heart. So, and they try
Mm.
to fill it with something. Me with crime, it was very thrilling crime, steal stuff,
Mhm.
um enter buildings that I shouldn't enter, vandalism. I've done it all, and not to say that my parents were terrible. They were really good parents, actually, and that's me. It was mostly genes, I think. More on that later. But I think we should just give these folks more of our time, energy, resources. I'm 100% willing to do that as well, to give back to society. What do you think about that?
I agree. But I also think they got to meet you, halfway. Some people don't necessarily want to change. They just look at it as like, damn, I got busted. I can't wait to get back to it. And there's also a conditioning where it becomes a lifestyle. But if somebody wants to change and they're willing to change, absolutely. I think that should be the path that we give them. Because and I think this has lightened up since like I first went, like I said, almost 30 years ago. I think there's been a lot of decriminalization of drugs and alcohol, which I think is really good. But I don't think in its place that they've offered a whole lot of alternatives. Like, for example, like my program's not funded by the government or the state or anything else, even though there's tons of money there. But to be able to apply for that or get the money for that, there's just so many strict standards, and you have to take everything, and you got, medicate everybody. Like that's like the new norm, is just put everybody on a bunch of medications, take them off whatever they're on and put them on like all these prescription drugs. Now we call them sober. Now we call them, rehabilitated. But in reality, they're just switching addictions. And that is their solution for people who need and want help, which kind of sucks because it's just more of the same.
Better zombies, I would call it that way. Do you think we
Right.
should legalize coke? Because here in Mexico, there's still this narco war going on at the border,
Mhm.
and I think it would almost instantly fix it. Obviously, it's way more complex than that, but would you be for that?
For cocaine,
Yeah.
I don't know. That one, it can really, alter your mind and create aggression, and it's so addictive. You could do a line and then 2 seconds later you want another one, and I think that's where the crime starts to come from, is like people trying to support that kind of addiction. So that's one of the drugs that I don't know that it would solve a lot of problems. I get it would handle the crime aspect and all that, but then they'll just come up with a new one, like, we have fentanyl in place right now, or all these other ones that they're sliding in there. So it's like we could legalize it, but then there'll be 5 behind it that aren't.
But people do coke not to get aggressive. They do it to, chill and feel very powerful, I guess, is the main effect. Maybe the aggression even comes from all the shit that they put in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think, yeah, I think and I'd rather see angry people than, like people dying on a daily basis, and just Trump investing in building walls, and stuff like that. But it's a very complex one indeed. I want to talk about addiction itself. Like, what type of clients are you seeing? Because if it's not government sponsored, I'm guessing you're not seeing too much crackheads or junkies because they just don't have the money or the consciousness to go to you. So, like,
No, I
what?
do. I mean, there's still
Yeah.
families that want to help them. There's
Okay.
still, insurance that we take, Blue Cross, different things like that, if they have insurance, which was mandated many years ago. So we still do get, your junkies and your crack addicts. But I would say, like, the biggest thing that we've seen, especially since the pandemic, is alcohol has made the biggest rise. So, 69% of our demographic right now is there because of alcohol. So that's pretty big when you consider everything else combined is only 31%. And that includes like prescriptions and cocaine and weed and all that other stuff combined, only 31%. And alcohol being the big one at 69%. It's really dangerous. And people are drinking to such extremes, the physical, mental, damage that it's doing, medically induced comas just to get people, detox safely. Like it's pretty bad, but it's the silent killer that nobody's talking about because it was considered essential. And a lot of people that were stuck at home and started drinking as a means of coping, they were unable to just stop when the pandemic ended. It's like now they have that addiction to alcohol. I mean, you can literally just sit at home and DoorDash yourself alcohol. You don't even have to leave the house anymore. So they've made it so accessible that that's for sure our biggest our biggest demographic.
Yeah, that's a sad, sad vision right there of someone solo drinking. I watched the movie, was it Revenant? And he comes back from the army with PTSD. You guys have a lot of that in US. And yeah, he just drinks himself and falls on the floor of his garage. He has a garage business and he wakes up the next, you know. And I guess that has happened to a lot of folks. Me personally, I started drinking, I think, at 13 or 14. And I blacked out probably like 150 times before the age of 18. So it was pretty bad. I wasn't addicted to it, but it was like a competition. And talking about aggression, well, a lot of people get quite aggressive on alcohol. I certainly did. It's like this overconfidence, right? Like testosterone. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, very
Well,
pernicious.
also
And
that Irish in you, right? Like that.
yes,
Aren't they known for drinking and fighting? That's just kind of part of the
yeah,
culture.
yeah, very Conor McGregory.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also like fun and loving people, and yeah, and it's funny, right? Because I think that the human is made to consume quote unquote drugs. You and I talk about coffee before this interview, and yeah, that's the drug. That's my drug of choice nowadays, caffeine. You know, and it's the drug of choice of probably 50% of folks that are on this rotating planet. Is like, okay, the point now is not to have fun and party anymore. It's just to have this caffeine, hopefully get a bit of serotonin from it, and also be caffeined up so it can be more productive. That's the shifts that happened in my life. I think I replaced alcohol with caffeine. But coming back to COVID, yeah, very sad. Lots of isolation, and what is sadder than drinking yourself to sleep? You know. Okay, so alcohol, we have crack in there, and crack cocaine, and yeah, weed is also another one we could talk about. But one that is really preoccupying to me. Well, I want to talk about two of them, and they're interrelated. The first one is video games. It's
Mm,
kind of very light and not so harming, but in my opinion, can condition the brain
sure.
to go from that to porn usually, and
Hmm.
then from porn it can get to like higher stuff. Both things you seem harmless, but what are your thoughts on these two addictions?
I agree. I mean, I think when they start becoming like a crutch or an escapism, that's when it's a problem. And I think both of them are creating an alter reality that real reality can't compare to. And so, like, to have a normal relationship after you've been addicted to porn, like that partner might not stack up because they've gotten to such an extreme of what the person needs or wants to see just to get that excitement. And so I think for those reasons, for sure, they can be harmful. Obviously, developing minds with kids with the video games, it's not good. You know, my son loved him, and I would call him Gamehead. He would just be like there for so many hours, and you tried to have a conversation. It was like I could just get like grunts out of him, like like there was no interaction. It made it very okay for
Uh,
him to just sort of be there and be by himself. And I think it just ruins like human connection, where we get so much out of, because it becomes like a solo world, much like you said with addiction with alcohol and drugs. It just becomes like a very cut off from reality and everybody else kind of situation that's difficult to get out of.
so here comes the moment where I ask parenting tips, because I'm about to have mine in less than 2 years with wifey. What do you do? You know, like, should I put a screen in front of his face? Should it be like a quiz, a Sudoku? Should it be like a chat GPT in which they learn something and ask questions? Like, what should I do there?
I don't know. It's a whole different world than when my kids were young. I mean, I would definitely limit screen time. I know, like, what I've seen, especially in recent times, I did not. I worked so much that I allowed the screen to sort of be the babysitter for me. But I know what I've seen, in my opinion, what is successful parenting is limiting screen time and being aware. Like, the kids, like let's just say with the iPad, like it is so intuitive that kids can get on YouTube, they can get into trouble with pulling up videos or Snapchats or things like that. Like, be highly aware of what your kid is being exposed to, because if you're not educating them, then that's where they're getting the majority of their information, which could be really, who knows what's feeding those brains. So I would be like overly into whatever, if you are allowing them to have screen time, what it is, and then have it be a benefit. And if their grades slip, or they're, not doing their chores, or they're not doing school, I would limit that or cut that out, and they have to earn it back. And then, it's moderation again.
All right, thank you for that. Gonna be mindful of our time here. Gonna invite you for round two also to discuss about health and all of that. But I want to ask a question that has to do directly with addiction and recovery. I often picture the Batman black hole, well, the prison that's underground and Batman trying to get out of it. But obviously, Batman had the will to get out of this prison and tried to jump, even that if that meant risking his life. A lot of people, we started this podcast, they don't have the desire to change. My question to you is, when does a person reach that black hole and do not have escape velocity anymore, and is it possible to help them out of that black hole?
Absolutely. Like for me, it took being, and I was young. I was 21. I was like, dude, I'm just starting, but I was threatened with 10 years in prison. That was enough for me to say, you're right. This is a much better choice for me. So a lot of times it takes, an ultimatum from a family member, cut off from seeing people, finances, losing their job. There's usually some catalyst that precipitates the need and want for change.
Some pain,
We
some high
utilize
pain.
intervention a lot when the family's ready, but the person is not. We'll utilize interventionists to sort of get that person there so that they at least walk in the door. And then once, they're there and they start going through the steps, if they can meet us halfway, we will help them all the way across the finish line. And sometimes it takes a while for them to see that there is another way out, and they want that.
And do you think that I'm a huge believer in mindset hacks? I think it's somewhat easy, but it's easy for me because I can almost create brain cells on command. I've conditioned my brain to be super adaptable and create these mindset blocks, just like Lego blocks on demand. I think it's harder for people, but do you think it would help them to think in terms of experimentations instead of you tried, you failed, your failure? Because that's the mindset that this educational system teaches us, is like, oh, you got a bad grade, you're not worth any love or so. Do you think that just teaching them that, oh, if they come in the program, but that's a trick here, we want them to go all in, but if they fail, if they relapse, they can try again and again and again until they succeed? Do you think that will help?
I think it definitely helps, but I think you're right. A lot of people don't necessarily want it because they think there's one way. It's like this specific thing. Like I brought up AA and NA. So a lot of people don't want help because they failed multiple times with that methodology, not realizing there's other alternatives out there. So, the fact that they keep trying over and over again tells you that they want help. Maybe they just haven't found the right help for them. And that's why they're sort of hopeless and have given up.
I had frustrations today and yesterday about an employee and not being able to change that person. And it's, to me, I've gave up on the feeling of trying to think that I'm a hero, that I'm being able to change people. How do you detach yourself from that while caring enough and having enough
Mm.
empathy for the person for them to succeed?
Oh, that's a tricky one because you have to care enough to want to help them, even though they don't want the help. But you can't care more than they do, because then it's like trying to save a drowning man, right? You're going to end up drowning trying to save somebody who doesn't want to be saved. So it's a very tricky situation to be in. But again, if you love and care about this person, if you see an inkling of them wanting to change or wanting help, as long as someone's wanting help, I'll keep trying to help them, but not at the sake of myself or my business.
Think success stories may help, right? Like if someone goes through your program and is like, yo, this changed my life, and you bring
Yeah.
that person on board on the team to deal with folks that, and if, especially if the wound is really fresh, there's also always the risk that they might relapse. And so that's like the dichotomy, right? But do you do some of that?
Yeah. So I have almost 100 employees, and I would say 95% of them have all been through the program. We have a trainee program. So after they graduate and they think they want to join staff, we have a 90-day sort of training period to see if they're a good fit for us, if we're a good fit for them. We give them tools and things like that. So But you're right. Like that is what our clients respond to is like, oh, you've been there. You understand. You're like me. It's not somebody who got their education and degree in school and has zero understanding of how it actually works from having been there themselves. So that's kind of like my secret sauce is that the majority of my staff have all been through the program and overcome their own addictions.
So I switched to caffeine as a drug. I switched to endorphins with sports, just like you. I switched to entrepreneurship. I switched to mindfulness as drugs of choice for my brain. Do you feel that some of these folks could switch to that? We often hear about cigarettes and coffee for folks in relapse, but do you think that can be a viable switch, a scalable switch?
Absolutely. That's my whole goal. So, replace the old habits with healthy, good habits. So the day they enter our program, they start doing mindfulness. They do it every day they're there. As soon as they come in the door, we have them walking. And then as soon as they're done with detox, they're doing CrossFit. My goal there too is to replace, the old habit of using and learn how exercise can create those same sort of endorphins and feel good. Like I would much rather somebody was addicted to exercise than drugs. So I absolutely think there's benefit. And when you take something away, you've got to kind of fill that vacuum, or else nature and life will naturally fill it with something maybe not as good. So I'm all about refilling all those old habits with healthy new habits.
Okay, last question for you, and we're gonna do round two because I have a bunch still. But how do you deal with the drama?
Which drama from the clients?
Yeah,
I mean, we're so
that
used
answers
to
the
it.
question. It's like, yo, that's not even drama anymore. I've dealt with so much of it, but to me, an outsider, you must have a lot of drama in that business of people doing crazy shit while on the program.
We do. I mean, for example, yesterday, one of our clients had gotten an altercation with another client, and it was severe enough that one of them we had to suspend, and the other one we did what we call a work project, where it's like you pull them off of their program. Now let's do some like, is this going to benefit you in life? Let's do some study. Let's do some amends because your actions kind of hurt the group. So we're going to give you an ability to sort of make that up to the group. And, I don't want to say like you're in a timeout, but you're going to think about your actions before we allow you to continue on your program so that when you get hit with this stuff out in life, you don't completely derail. Like you learn tools of how to better handle those situations. So we have all kinds of tools of how we handle the clients, how we handle our staff, how we handle our trainees when those situations come up, because it's just life. It's going to happen, but also, like you said, mindfulness. Were you being mindful in that moment or were you being reactionary? Let's think about that. Did you find your breath? Did you get through the trigger or did you just respond to that person? And so sometimes I think it's a blessing when that stuff comes up when they're in the program, because then they're better equipped when they go out into the world for when the world hits them in the face. If someone ran a perfectly good program with no hiccups and no problems and everything was great, they're kind of like in this beautiful little bubble and community. They're not as prepared for life and the real world when they leave.
Let's keep it to that. Thank you so much for these insights, Angie. Where can people find out more about you?
So you can find me on my Instagram. It's Angie Going Rogue. And if you need help, our website is elevaterehab.org. There's 24/7 help there with the chat assistant 800 number, all about my program, how to reach us, how to reach me. Very responsive. If you need help, this is the place. Even if we're not the right fit for you, we will find the right fit for you.